Now, I used to buy this magazine called Famous Monsters of Filmland, which is my Bible. So I knew all about this film. And it was made in the revolutionary new process, Percepto. What was that going to be? And I remember walking up and seeing the poster, and it said, London premiere, The Tingler. And the poster was an exact copy of the American poster. And it showed a cinema seat with all these faces around it screaming. It said, do you have the guts to sit in this chair? The first motion picture in Percepto. Through this amazing new process, you will experience the emotions of the characters on the screen. Guaranteed, the tingler will break loose while you are in the audience. Well, how could I not go? Having no idea what Percepto was going to be, and I sit through the whole film waiting for something to happen. Well, of course, they didn't do it over in England. And what they did in America was they wired the seats up, and they put like these vibrators underneath all the seats. So the tingler, which is this parasite that looks like a big lobster, rubber lobster, that grows on your spine when you're terrified. And when you scream, that's when the tingler disappears. But if you can't scream, the tingler will just break your spine. Suddenly the screen goes white. And then you get the tingler crawling across the screen, the silhouette. And then it goes black again. Then you hear Vincent going, ladies and gentlemen, do not panic. Do not panic. The tingler is loose in the theater. Scream, scream for your lives. Well, at that point in America, all the seats started buzzing. But it never happened over here. But apparently, I heard that when they did the very first showing in America, the cinema, they wired the seats up the week before, so it was ready. And the projectionist actually pressed the buzzer during the previous week's film, which was the Nun story. So halfway through the Nun story, I'm watching Audrey Hepburn praying, you know, everybody's seats started to go. So imagine people jumping up going, oh, I can walk, miracolo, miracolo. I do 2 one-man shows, or is that 1 two-man show? I'm not sure. Anyway, 2 one-man shows. It starts off as if it is actually a lecture on American humour, you know, and then it's not. It's just an excuse to go through chronologically all my favourite routines, which I learned. And I've sort of been working on that show now, on and off, for 20 years, because I started doing it as a lunchtime sometimes, or a late nighter if I was working in rep theatres around the country, you know. And every so often I've had other, but more prestigious gigs, if you like. You know, and I found I could do doubles. I think this is something to do with my childhood. Or I think partly being an only child, you have quite a strong imaginative life. And I found I had no trouble being more than one person at the same time, which is probably a bit worrying. So if I wasn't an actor, you know, I'd probably just be a schizophrenic, you know. But I decided I'm going to do the second show. And this time I want it to be about all the real rough end of it. It's all the garbage that I saw as a child and which filled me up, you know, and which is still there, really. And that's not to decry it. I know it's rubbish, but I love it because it's rich rubbish. It's like sort of hummus, you know. And so I wanted to call it Talking Turkeys because turkeys is, you know, the phrase for a bad film. And I wanted to kind of dig out all the films that nobody else ever paid any attention to, like Plan 9 from Outer Space, you know, which is generally regarded as the worst film ever made. And it is an appalling motion picture, but there's something terribly sweet about it because it's so inept and everybody's trying their best, and that's why it's so funny. But people weren't trying to make a bad film. You know, people don't usually try and make a bad film, like plays. People don't deliberate, hey, let's do a really bad show. You know, because it was entirely my dad's fault that I got into movies the way I did, so young. And I owe him everything for that, really, because it's given me a very rich kind of bedrock of experience, I suppose, to build my life on, which I don't feel badly about at all. That I spent my entire childhood in the dark, which I did. You know, I can't even say it was abuse. I wasn't under the stairs or anything. I was under the stars in the Astoria of Finsbury Park, because that was this wonderful cinema where it was like a Spanish village, and the ceiling of the cinema was the dark blue, and it had little lamps in it, twinkling. So if you got bored with the film, which was quite common, especially if you're a little boy, you know, you look up and you're out in Spain with these lights. Oh, and there it is. The Spanish village. This place is amazing. But of course it's been perfectly restored to what it was when it was first opened. So I probably wouldn't have seen it looking like... I don't remember it being quite as bright as this, because it wouldn't have been. It was 20 years old by the time I started coming here. So it would have been starting to get a little more lived in and used, just like a Spanish village, I suppose. I came here with my mother and my aunt on Saturdays, because my father would take me to the pictures on Thursdays to see our kind of films, and then my mum and my aunt would go on Saturday to see women's pictures. And sometimes, if they were sort of women's pictures that were suitable for me, I went along as well. And for some reason, I remember coming here to see The Snows of Kilimanjaro with Gregory Peck and Susan Hayward. And I'm still coming here in 1970, and by that time, it was almost as empty as it is now. And I sat here watching a Japanese double bill of Matango, Fungus of Terror, and Goki, Body Snatcher from Hell. I'm surprised that more people don't know those films. But I came here in 1958, I think, 59, to see Around the World in 80 Days. I came here in 1961 to see The Guns of Navarone, because big movies, before they went on general release, when they'd finished at the West End, because they generally played just at one cinema, they would come here, perhaps, for a week, and you'd pay a little bit more, because it was before the general release. I saw The Guns of Navarone here. But I had no memory of the fact that this wonderful Spanish village at the top here, on the side, went all the way round at the back as well. It's absolutely amazing. And I think I was so privileged to be allowed to come here. They used to call old cinemas dream palaces. And this was a dream palace. You didn't just get a box with a screen. You got somewhere that excited your imagination when you came in. I remember seeing a trailer for a film here. I never saw the film. and it was called Decameron Nights with Louis Jourdan and Joan Fontaine. And I remember it being in very bright colour, and it was all sort of slightly saucy Boccaccio stories put on film in a very tame 1950s way. And I had no idea what happened to that film. I'd never heard of it. And my head's stuffed with films like that. But also my head's stuffed with this cinema. Because in between where I lived in Tottenham and the West End, where obviously there were kind of wonderful cinemas like the Empire, Leicester Square, which was amazing, this was the only place that gave you more than just seeing a film. And it was just a bus journey away. Just get a bus from Tottenham, come in, and sit under the stars somewhere in Spain, even if it was November in London when you got out. There'll never be anything like this again. And I was very lucky to be around, to be part of it. These stairs are all that remain of the ABC Leighton, which eventually became the Quicksand. I used to come here all the time when I was first teaching, which was back in 1967. And I was teaching down the road at Leighton. And I used to finish a hard day's work at school, and then to relax, put my briefcase, my jacket with the leather patches on the elbows, and I came into here, well, into what was the ABC, and watched films like, this was the time of the Italian Job, and Once Upon a Time in the West, and movies like that. And it wasn't a bad cinema. It's a shame though, isn't it? Sorry, Mr. Quicksave. I liked it better as a cinema. I bet you did too. She's so chatty. This was my favourite magazine when I was a kid. Growing up in Tottenham, on a Saturday afternoon, the whole world would be heading down to White Hart Lane to go and see a match at Spurs. Little fat kid pushing his way through the crowds, going the other way up to a High Cross, Tottenham High Cross, because there was a newsagent's up there that sold American magazines. And every month, if I was lucky, I'd be able to get hold of Famous Monsters of Film Net. Oh, joy, oh, bliss, oh, rapture. But not actually this copy, because normally it would come and there would be like a little 2 and 6 that have been stamped onto it, so it could be sold over here. But I never got hold of this particular issue, so I was panicking because it didn't complete my collection. So I wrote to the editor, one Forrest J. Ackerman, and in order to ingratiate myself with him, I included some horror film stills that somehow I managed to get hold of. Island of Lost Souls and House of Frankenstein. And I sent them to Forrest completely unsolicited and said, "Dear Forrest, please send me back a copy of Famous Monsters of Filmland, number 6, February 1960, for my collection. Thank you so much." And he did. And when you open it, it says inside, next to a Morlock from the Time Machine, it says, "Beast wishes." It's a great sense of humour. "Beast wishes to Mike from Forry Ackerman, 1962. This is probably worth a great deal of money now, because collectors like things like this. But it's never even vaguely occurred to me to get rid of it. And I don't sit looking at it, except when making a film like this. But magazines like this meant an awful lot to me as a kid. And there's my hero, Vincent Price in House on Haunted Hill. Emergo. There he is, about to winch the skeleton back onto the screen. I must read some grown-up books sometime. Like The Telephone Directory. Nah, too many characters.